when this founder's mother asked her to design a medical alert device that looked like a piece of jewelry, she immediately said yes. But she had no idea what she was getting herself into. In this episode of the AgeTech Podcast, I am joined by Mara Perlmutter, founder and CEO of TrelaWear, to talk about how design can destigmatize aging. Mara, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
So could you tell us a little bit about the origin story, because you have quite a unique background for an AgeTech founder?
Yes, thank you. So I think what happened in my experience was my beautiful fashionista mom refused to wear any of the white, unattractive plastic devices that were available in the marketplace. And just, kind of immediately said to me, Mara, you've been in the jewelry business over 25 years. Can't you make me something beautiful to wear in case of an emergency? And of course I said, sure, Mom, having actually no idea about, AgeTech, emergency alert, etc. But being, a good business person, I actually enrolled an entrepreneurial friend of mine out of LA who shared with me, we should go to the CES show. Let's walk around. Let's see what's available in the marketplace. And then we'll understand, is this an opportunity or not? So we went, we saw there was an over-proliferation of products for men, mostly watches, mostly activity trackers related, but there was actually nothing for women, which floored me, since women make up such a large percentage of the, aging population. So, I immediately, said, okay, there's a white space in the market. I've been in the corporate business life for, 30 plus years. Let's see what we can do here.
That is such a fantastic way to phrase it, because when I was preparing for this podcast, one of the questions that I had wanted to ask you is, what made you decide to start a company in a market that seems very, very saturated? But when you put it this way, like there are not really products that are designed for women, it makes total sense.
And, I couldn't actually believe not only were there no products designed for women, there were actually so few women in this business. This was a business that is currently even controlled, by men designing products. Men designing products for women. In all due respect, many of them have no idea what women want, what they like, what they prefer. And I just felt like there had to be other solutions that women would want to have available to, look, everybody understands the value of personal safety and security, especially today. And I think what's most important is that it's not just the tech. The tech, of course, is important. But I always say, if it's great tech in an ugly device, people don't wear it, it's not great tech. Great tech is made great because people enjoy wearing it. It's, in our case, we say it's your own little secret unless you choose to share it with someone. Because nobody would ever know that the pendant I'm wearing is an emergency alert device, which was the whole, substance for us forming this company, providing discreet, beautiful, attractive solutions that would destigmatize wearing an emergency response device.
I love that. Now, when you make the device a jewelry, it automatically makes it more expensive. So how did you sort of craft your marketing messaging to sort of walk between the lines here?
It's a really good question, because this industry, personal emergency response systems, known as PERS, was built on white plastic devices. Most of the industry standard model is you give away the device and you have an upload or upcharge for the service. So the service that is available today from traditional providers is really expensive. Most of the time, it's $49.95 and above. So what I did is I recognized, number one, after several starts and stops in the business, that what I really believed in order to satisfy not just my mom, but a much greater audience, was we wanted a wireless solution. We wanted a mobile app where, again, you could in real time be able to, identify, what the emergency was. And, we wanted the service to be affordable. So what we did, and again, this is an evolving process by all means in terms of learning what is the right formula for selling our devices, but our devices are beautiful and they are, a quality product, and they are more expensive than plastic, no question. So when we first went out in the marketplace, we were charging, a fair amount of money, which right now is $225. But our subscription pricing is only $19.99 a month. And actually, for a caregiver-only subscription, it starts at $9.99 a month. But that being said, I think as the business has evolved and we are fine-tuning our marketing and pricing formula, we are going to try a model where we are going to be more similar to what a traditional purse company does. We are actually going to try to give away the pendant with the purchase of a 6-month monitoring service plan for a very affordable price of $199.94 to be exact. And we're going to see, what the audience appetite for that change in our marketing is going to do. The most important thing is how many people will wear our pendants? Because we know that technology is great. We know that people like our pendants and enjoy wearing them and don't feel ostracized or stigmatized. So the question is, what is the best path for us to sell more pendants, to make a bigger difference, to increase compliance, and for people, of all ages, not to feel, old and not valued, but in fact, to empower women to feel good about aging and their safety.
So you come from the jewelry business, which is very different than making purse, which is not just a piece of tech, a device, but also a subscription type of business, which I don't recall any type of jewelry that does that. Maybe the Aura ring, which is also a device. Like, how is it for you? What type of advice would you love to give Mara of a few years ago when you were just starting out?
Yes. Yeah, I wish I had known then what I know now. Yes. There is a lot of learning that goes into the tech business, no question about it. I always say the easiest thing for me was to build the jewelry and to know that it would be jewelry that would be well accepted by women of all ages. The harder thing was to find the right tech partner who believed in this niche product, but also could connect me to, industry leaders in the purse space so that I could at least make a presentation to all the CEOs of the leading companies so that they would understand what my goal was and to see if there was alignment. So when I first started out, I was very fortunate to have met the CEO of Mobile Help, who loved the devices that we were developing, but didn't trust my tech. And I was like, fair, I wouldn't trust my tech. But what he did is introduce me to the largest provider of the traditional white plastic devices in the marketplace. The company out of California that was really the industry leader. I made a presentation to them, shared my goals of the company. They, again, loved what we were doing, saw the opportunity. And even though we have had many iterations in our tech since the beginning over 5 years ago, they have continued to support the goal of providing a discrete safety with style solution. So we have industry-leading tech. And then about 3 years ago, I, was reading all about new wireless solutions coming out. And I happened to read about Dr. Shay Gregg, who was the founder of Fall Call Solutions, who was building a platform for devices, a wireless platform for devices to run on, an app platform. So I contacted Shay. We really had very similar values and goals about how we looked at the aging, the aging landscape, but in particular, he as a trauma surgeon who was head of trauma initially when I met him at Yale, New Haven, and Bridgeport, he saw so many aged people who were in the ER from falling. So his goal, of course, was, developing fall detection that would be best in class and would eliminate, so many of these unnecessary visits to his ER. My goal was to create devices that would run on his app platform, but actually would be attractive and would provide a solution rather than having devices that, as many people, become aware of, are kept in the drawer, they're never used, etc., until, unfortunately, there is an emergency. So I think we were both aligned in our goals. So Fall Call is now my app provider. We run on his enterprise system. And we are able to, again, because of his technology and my technology, we bring all the partners together, and we work together on developing the tech that is inside TrelaWear devices.
Amazing. And are there any specific restrictions when you try to put an emergency button inside a piece of jewelry? Because it's typically made, like you said, of plastic.
So I think that was the biggest challenge that we found, is we were the first metal-based solution that was developed. And with that, definitely comes some connectivity issues. The first noting, and you can see, when you look at our device closely, that it is not all over 360-degree metal. There are breaks in what we call the form factor, or the pendant itself. And the reason there are breaks, very similar to your iPhone, is that is where your radioactive waves actually get distributed. And that's how we were able to overcome having, number one, a solution that was smaller than these unattractive, large devices, because we're always looking for smaller, more attractive, thinner devices to put out there for consumers. So the first thing we had to, share with our designers, and again, all of the designers that design our collections are jewelry designers, fashion designers. They have nothing to do with tech. How we work is we get the tech specs from each respective company we work with, and we design around their tech and their specs. So the initial issue was having to put together two-piece castings in order to form a device. Once that happened, I would share with you, we are evolving. The other big issue was battery. And the issue, with all wireless devices, of course, is battery and battery life. So we chose a path, and I'm not saying that we won't, as we continue to evolve, change that path. But currently we use a non-chargeable and non-replaceable battery. Our battery life, though, does last 1.5 years. We guarantee it for 1 year. In all our findings thus far, it lasts at least 1.5 years. Occasionally, it does last longer. That being said, yes, there is a cost to that. There is a challenge to that. We know we're a niche product. We also are not water resistant. We are splash resistant, meaning if you're at your sink and you're wearing it and you get water on it, no issue. We do not recommend you wearing it in the shower, though. So that, of course, is also, a bit of a drawback. These are things that we will evolve. We understand it is a niche product. but it is a product that does fit the needs of an independent, senior. And it is a product that has a very wide, in our opinion, age demographic that can benefit from wearing it. So, drawbacks, pros and cons to every device.
The first generation always has some room for improvement.
Correct.
So can we talk a little bit about your funding journey? If I understand correctly, you were initially bootstrapped, which sounds really challenging for not just for a hardware product, but for a jewelry product, which has to be expensive to make.
Yeah. So, it pays to, and this is just a good business advice, never burn your bridges. No matter, throughout my career, I've always prided myself on developing, strength in relationships up and down the supply chain. And that has really benefited me, particularly at the beginning of this journey where, jewelry manufacturers overseas who I had extensive contacts with, most of them turned me down. Most of them did not want to, kind of venture into the tech business. But there were two in particular that saw a vision of what could be a new growth opportunity for them. And yes, there was a lot of ups and downs, trials and tribulations, but the support at the end of the day between, and this, in today's world might even be more of a phenomenon, the support I received from my Chinese manufacturer to work with my Taiwanese tech manufacturer was incredible. And I think they all, kind of got behind developing this unique, like best-in-class, first-to-market type of jewelry-inspired product that, I was able to negotiate, a lot of very inexpensive, cost-effective product development. I was able, just because, I do have a jewelry team, I was able to have designs created at a pretty easy, not too expensive versus other design products I've worked on, projects I've worked on. Because again, the team knew we had a vision for what we wanted to look like. We had the tech specs to, develop around. We knew, some of the features and benefits, which I can go through later, of our product that we wanted to put into it. So we were able to streamline some of that design and development process, which allowed it to be a little more affordable. But at the end of the day, I always say my husband was my banker originally. He's no longer my banker, but he's the one who, again, believed in me, believed in what we were doing, and believed that there was a white space in the market where we could fulfill this void.
Wonderful. And I also wanted to talk a little bit about sort of distribution, because I know that you're selling mostly direct to consumer and that you recently got into QVC. And I also see on your website that you're HSA, FSA eligible. So I'd love to hear about how you managed to accomplish both of these, because they sound like significant distribution channels.
So I think that, again, resilience and belief in what you're doing, passion is really what drives it. So again, I have spent my entire career prior to becoming a baby boomer entrepreneur in the corporate world, whether it be first at Saks Fifth Avenue as a buyer, a merchant, and leading on to lead several jewelry companies as president. I have always developed retail distribution strategies for each of these selective brands. So I have always believed and have worked with QVC quite a bit over the years that it was a wonderful channel for storytelling, for introducing smaller, new, unique products, for giving, the founders and or the leaders an opportunity to not only share your story, but to showcase your product, to spend a little more time selling on the features and benefits. So QVC was always a goal. And also, let's face it, they cater to the 50 and over female audience, which was directly aligned with who our products were developed for. So that being said, it took me 2 years with all the testing, all the roadblocks, even for myself who have contacts at QVC, who had once been on QVC, to navigate as a solo entrepreneur, how to get through that this was a product that should be showcased, that we had an opportunity to, really do something great for their audience and showcase a unique product that not only was beautiful, and we all know the QVC customers love jewelry, but actually served a higher purpose. So we got our 7 minutes, and we're still on QVC.com. I think we wish we all would have sold more units, and we're fine tuning that as well. But I think the opportunity to even showcase it in 100 million households in the US, I think was a positive for us. It validated that, number one, they believed this was a good product. They tested it. I can't express to you how many hours of QC they do on products before they go on air. And they thought the product was great. So that being said, it gave us as a company validation and trust. So that part was good. But at the end of the day, there are plenty of people who don't shop QVC, who didn't get the opportunity to see us on air. So of course, we're on QVC.com. But we also believe that, there is good messaging and storytelling on our own TrelaWear.com. So, we again, with our limited marketing funds, we are now using more and more influencers in our marketing strategy to try to build our awareness, to create, a broader target audience than just that, 75 and over senior, because we do believe there is tremendous benefit to that 55 and older female. And the other thing is that when I actually read in the New York Times about the expansion of FSA and HSA benefits, I immediately called all three of the companies that were cited in the New York Times Sunday article and, picked out the one that I thought was most aligned with the products that we were offering. And to be honest with you, when you're on Shopify, which is what our platform runs for TrelaWear.com, it was pretty easy to implement FSA, HSA today. Our products are immediately covered. You don't need any kind of additional verification letter. And, it's been a nice additional add to another way to, fund it, pay for it, justify that it is a little bit of a higher price, et cetera. So it's been well received. It's brand new, to be honest with you. We went live about a month ago, but the feedback is people are happy that it's an option that we're offering.
For sure. And did you have to qualify to sort of go down that route?
Yes. So the company we're using is called WithFlex, and they actually are a terrific organization, and they have pre-verified that emergency response pendants in our category are immediately covered. So we do not need, even though these companies will provide that extra step, that verification letter if needed, we did not need the additional verification letter. So anytime you go on our site, you purchase the pendant, you will immediately have a pop-up option to purchase with FSA, HSA with your account.
One other question that I wanted to ask you is, you mentioned that it took you 2 years to get into QVC despite having a previous connection. So
yes.
what is that process like? Because I assume that there are founders watching us right now who desperately want to get into QVC.
Yeah, I am happy to share, my experience and journey. It is the goods and bad. The good is I understood the process. The bad is, when you come from corporate and me as a senior leader, when I first was on QVC, we went through all those steps that I went through as a solo entrepreneur, but those steps were managed by many other people who reported it to me versus me managing the whole process. And the first thing is, number one, being able to connect with the appropriate merchant and get a cheerleader behind you at Q or HSN who believes in your product. The first thing is that I was very fortunate through one of my industry contacts and organizations, Women in Retail Leadership Circle, that I've been a member now for several years. There was a woman there from QVC who was also in this same organization who saw my product, loved it, and said, you know what, we need to get this on Q. So she started the journey for me. So then connected me to the right merchants. Then it's the QC. And QC at QVC is very intense there. And we had many different QC components. So there was the tech component, there was the jewelry component, there is the subscription and app component. So there were many different testing levels that we had to go through. And then it's the talking points, what you're allowed to say on air, what you're not allowed to say on air. You go through media training. You go through a lot of, remote training through, again, I was fortunate enough to be on air in the studio. Sometimes you're remote. So you have to go through testing and what's allowed and what's not allowed, et cetera. So it was a lot of learning. It was a lot of stops and starts. It was a lot of, continuing to make people interested in our product. And then, of course, it's also the delivery. And it's also, you internally being prepared, setting up, Rhythm, which is the platform that, is like an EDI platform that you receive orders and you invoice orders from. It's also making sure that you are managing the relationship in terms of inventory. We chose to do a drop ship model. Some people choose to do an asset model where they send products, to the QVC warehouse. We personally, and I believed this, that I wanted to control the inventory. And I also am very fortunate that my partners who do fulfillment, I am able to keep on my shelf unassembled inventory. So as soon as I get an order, they will input the stone and then ship the order. So for me, a drop ship model was much, much more desirable. That being said, it takes time to, get inventory and get enough inventory to support the projection, et cetera. So, it's unusual that it took 2 years. I will say that, but it is not unusual for it to take 6 months to a year. And you need to plan that. And again, I'm happy to, talk with any fellow founders and share my journey and any, advice and particular contacts. But I still believe that it is a great platform for aged tech founders to pursue. I do.
For sure. In terms of the demographics, it makes a lot of sense.
Oh. And the storytelling.
Absolutely. And do you feel like now that you've been on QVC, do you get more search traffic, or do you get more engagement on your social media assets because people have seen you on TV and now they're looking you up online?
So yes to all of that. I also was fortunate to get a few cover newspaper stories, particularly locally, some magazine stories, podcasts. I think a few more influencers reached out to me. I never focused, again, our choice, on building an Instagram following, et cetera. I always focused on affiliates. on, aligning TrelaWear with more established affiliates, because I really felt I needed the validation by others of a new product. Nobody knew TrelaWear. Nobody knew what this device was. They didn't know fall call. I felt like there was such a big leap in terms of asking people to believe and trust this device, which potentially could save your life, where there was no real validation by, any trusted. It wasn't like we had the Good Housekeeping seal of approval or anything. So I think for us, that's what QVC has done, is given us that validation. Yes, the traffic has been up. I would also say that this is a thoughtful purchase. Emergency response is not by any means, an impulse purchase. People have to see it over and over again. People have to believe that there is actually a use case for it. And I think, again, QVC allowed me to share those additional use cases, which are far beyond just that, aging in place scenario, which they're great for, but they're also great if you're a solo ager, if you're a lone worker, if you're a real estate agent showing an open house, if you're dating for the first time in 20 years, if you walk your dog alone at night. We hope we make this an affordable option for you, so that, you don't have to only wear it 24/7. You can keep it by the door. And when you're going out at night alone and you're going to walk through a dark parking lot, just throw it on just in case. I think that there is, a real void in having solutions for women, particularly as they age, that keep them safe, but with a sense of style and not, with a sense of stigmatizing them.
For sure. That was actually my last question. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you'd like to add? Any call to action to people in the audience?
So I think that if there is a message out there, I hope there's other founders who will join me in this, journey of ours. Because again, we all know there are 10,000, baby boomers turning 65, in the US every day. And they will demand solutions that are not just great tech, but that look great. And it's not just about the Apple Watch. Apple Watch is great, and we love that. And we actually pair to an Apple Watch. Wonderful. But there are plenty of people who don't want an Apple Watch. And there are plenty of people who want more simplified solutions that are just push a button and make it work. So I think if there are other founders out there who would like to be aligned with TrelaWear and be on this journey of supplying, and offering, attractive, discreet solutions for safety and security, I am all ears and would welcome hearing from them, because I know the market is ripe for other founders to get into this, and really us learning from one another. And if there is any out there, that would be my call to action, is to please reach out and contact me, because I'd love to have a conversation.
So, Mara, thank you so much for joining me on the show today. It was an absolute pleasure chatting.
Thank you. It was so nice to be here. I've enjoyed listening, and I'm so thankful to be able to now be a participant. Thank you.
Thank you. If you enjoyed this episode, there's another one YouTube thinks you'll enjoy right here. Until next time, stay humble, stay curious,